Hello, everybody. It's Coach Hughes here again from the Be Best You podcast. And I'm really excited to get to have the opportunity to interview Lucy Broadbent. Hello, Lucy. How are you?
Hello. Very well. Thanks.
Lucy, I found Lucy I actually was through Facebook, and I guess I the way Facebook works today, I clicked on something, and then whatever the algorithms are, all of a sudden I started getting a feed, and I guess I clicked on something about Ted Lasso because Lucy's book came up, and I was really excited about it. And I'm new to the series, probably a couple months ago or so, and I'm a huge fan. And when it was What Would Ted Lasso Do, I was like, wow, this is a perfect opportunity to, get some insight into, well, what he would do. But having the Be Best You podcast and having the opportunity, one, to be the best version of myself, but then helping other people be the best versions of themselves. The whole series is really about that. And so I reached out to Lucy, and she was kind enough to come on and speak a little bit about her book. As you notice, I got a lot of notes in here, and making little notes and highlights, and pages are all bent and stuff like that. And for those of you guys who don't like reading, come on now, this isn't a big book, and you can get it, in one sitting, really, and it flows wonderfully with some great tidbits. But thank you for writing the book. What was the premise behind writing? What was your motivation to write a book about the series?
Well, so first of all, I loved it. It came on. There was no hype about it. I had Apple, saw it, fell in love with it, and before long. So I'm a journalist. I've been a journalist all my life. I'm based here in Hollywood, but as you can hear, I'm from across the pond. And I'm sitting there watching this, and I'm seeing messages in there. And they're sort of messages on how we can live our own lives. And before long, I'd sort of watched the first series, and I'm sitting in my car in a parking lot, and someone scrapes the side of my car. And all of a sudden, ordinarily, I might have been a bit rude about it. There might have been some rather rude words. But strangely, Ted Lasso came into my head. That is the power of a TV show that you're watching too much, probably. And I thought to myself, what would Ted Lasso do? And Ted Lasso is this phenomenal character who chooses his reaction. He always tries to be his best self, such as your best you. That's how he is, which sounds a bit sort of sappy, perhaps, except that in a comedy show it sort of works. But he chooses his reaction when bad things happen. Things don't always go his way. It would be a very boring show if everything did go his way, same as us. So anyway, I got out of the car, and I was so nice to this person who had scraped my car. And she was a little old lady, and I was glad that I had not got out cursing. I came away, it wasn't that bad. I came away, and she was terrified, and I came away feeling good about myself. So there I was with a car that was damaged, but really not that badly. But I was feeling good about me, which is ultimately actually more important. So I thought, being a journalist, there's something there. There's something to this show. I watched it again, and I thought, you can break that down into psychology. There are fantastic leadership lessons in there. Really, you can take all kinds of little. It's like a trail of birdseed through this TV show, encouraging us to be our better selves. And I just picked up on that. I thought, would that work on a book? Started writing, because that's what I do. Started researching, because that's also what I do. And I think that there was a lot of research that they put in when they were making the show. Research into, it's called positive psychology movement. There was a real thing called positive psychology movement, which I could go on about. But in brief, I saw that, started writing. Oh, here I am, there's a book. And now people seem to like it. So I'm grateful to you.
No, I am too. And the other series, and it's funny because I was able to see one or two of your blogs, and I was happy to see you wrote something about another show which my wife and I just found recently, Shrinking,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is I think you're gonna have to write something about that too, because it has that same kind of subliminal positive messaging about self-help. And what we find is a lot of people find when they are working on themselves, they're being selfish. And over COVID, I came to the realization that really working on yourself isn't selfish, it's selfless. Not working on yourself is selfish. And I love how you said, you had a choice and you chose not to react, and you chose to maybe find out what happened and then end up being able to lead. And actually in there, there's a couple references to that kind of situation through his episodes where, he can react and he chooses to come from a positive promote. So one of the other books that I've been listening to is Flourish. And I think this gentleman is one of the first guys to start the positive psychology terminology, or it's referred to as that. Is that right?
Martin Seligman wrote a book about optimism.
Okay, right. Yep.
They talk about him as the grandfather of the positive psychology movement. I actually would argue that. I think there's someone who goes back further, but that he is referred to as that. Yes.
Yeah. No, and I had that book up here as well. So I was going to show you that. So these are two books too that kind of from your research. And what I also love about your book, and it's only this big, what's neat about it is all the different other links and that you have to further educate yourself about the research that you did for the book. So you can tell it's not just telling a retelling of a story, but you were actually connecting it to the psychology of it and then backing it up with the research. So if you want to go even further than the book and you want to follow the trail of research that you did, you supply all of those links in there. So I have a lot of reading to do after this book here, I thank you for that, by the way.
I hope the links still work. But the thing is, when you go down that route, there are way cleverer people than me, and you can really go down a rabbit hole with some of them, and that was never my intention. I'm not a scientist. I'm just good at research, and I think you can, as a journalist, you can take out the nub. If you're a scientist, you can really go in deep, but that was never my intention. I'm just not clever enough for that.
Yeah. And each chapter is kind of, and one is, and you have it behind you, this positive, if you think you can, you can, and if you think you can't, you won't. All those different little analogies that you hear out there. But how many people don't think that they can go to college, or don't think that they can, get a job that matters, or they're never going to meet somebody, or they can't get out of debt, that positive psychology piece. And behind you there, you have the sign up there, which is a big part of the show, is this believe. In your research, what did you find about that word, and why do you think that's important for people to recognize, to become the best version of yourself, that you need to believe in yourself?
Well, so psychologists call it self-efficacy, which you can't say if you've drunk too many tequilas. And it's all about it, precisely that. There's a lot of people that have weighed in on the subject. Michelle Obama has talked about it doesn't really matter where you come from. If you have somehow got that magic belief in yourself, you can achieve anything. Maybe, I don't know whether you can achieve anything, but I give us an example. If you think you will never be able to pass your driving test, then you're not even going to apply to get your license. And there it is, right there it is, self-fulfilled. But if you think, well, maybe I'll be able to pass my driving test, then you'll get the license, you'll take some lessons, you'll take the test, and you stand a good chance then of actually getting your driver's license. And so, again, that comes back to there's a granddaddy in that area, which is a man called Albert Bandura, who was a professor at Stanford, no longer with us, and he did a whole load of research doing scientific subjects on people, on what they think of themselves, what they think that they can achieve. And so, you know, it comes down to in Ted, it comes down to a simple belief sign. And it's in the TV show, it's really funny. He makes it really funny.
Yeah.
It's a very simple point. If you believe you can do something, you stand a cracking chance of actually doing it. It's not guaranteed, but guaranteed is if you think that it won't happen. So therefore you don't.
Now, in the TV show, there's so many characters, and every one of them, for those of you, the people who have watched it, will totally understand some of the names that we'll bring up. But, you know, in order to understand some of the people in the book, you probably best to watch it. But every one of the characters is so well framed, and every episode they spend a little more time on each one of them, and they obviously some more and more complex and evolved. But, you know, in Ted's situation, he's this positive guy, and then as the series rolls on, you realize that there's not so much a dark side to him, but, you know, he's a human being and he has flaws. He's this positive person, but he has anxiety. And one of my favorite, actually ironic, because on a personal level, is Roy Kent. As much as you don't want to like the guy, I've really become, I think right now in season 3, I think there's an episode tomorrow night here or next 2 nights. He might be my favorite, my front runner right now as my favorite character. But do you have a favorite character on the show? Is there one that you draw?
No, I don't. I think in my favorite characters are the writers, because I think that they're so clever, and you can see little streams. So they have a new character in season 3 called Zava, based on real life. Sort of, there's a real sort of superhero there, and he's coming out with some really interesting life. I mean, to be really specific, I love Hannah Waddington playing Rebecca, the boss. What I think, I love Ted. I think he's terrific. I think they all lead us on sort of different paths, and the thing that's great, the thing that stops it being sappy and sentimental, which it never quite goes. It never becomes syrupy.
No,
they're all flawed. They all have their little flaws, and like us. And it's the relatability. It's who do you relate? If you look on the internet, there's tons of little quizzes. Who do you relate to? But I think actually it boils down to the message, the overarching message. It is sort of almost the same. All these people are just like us.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, as you're saying that, I'm thinking of all the different times where I related with all of them at a certain point. For me personally, the one that most recently, and again, if you've watched the episodes, is when Roy Kent and the reporter, I'm thinking of his name. What is his? Yes, Krim, and where they come to where he kind of calls each other out, but then they realize, and when Roy Kent, why he left and how he wished he enjoyed that last season. And I think of myself where I am at my point in my career. I'm 57, been here a long time. You know, I want to be able to work hard for a long time, but I want to also enjoy this part of my career. That really resonated with me this last episode. It was the weirdest moment, and you know, there were things happening in my personal, professional life, and you're kind of lost, and I need an answer, and you know, maybe you go to church and find it, maybe you go to a counselor and find it, and all of a sudden I'm sitting in television and I'm watching the last episode, and I went, wait a minute, yeah, why don't I just enjoy? And that's the power of the show, right? I mean, how many moments are throughout the episodes that have been that are provided that way?
Yes, I think that's such a good point, because, and I think it's one of the points that they try and make, that it's actually about the journey and remembering to enjoy the journey. So one of the things that, I mean, when it comes down to leadership, I'm sure, because you've read it, that, you know, when you're a coach, that famous coach, John Wooden, they definitely picked up on that. And I know that Jason Sudeikis, who plays Ted Lasso, was a huge fan of John Wooden, the coach. And I've read in many interviews where he's talked about how he used John Wooden's principles, teaching improv So there are these leadership principles that he's picked up on himself, and he's woven in there. And there's little secret references to John Wooden all the way through it. The most obvious one, he has John Wooden did this pyramid of success, and there's a framed copy of it on the wall. But John Wooden's message was, it's not about the winning, it's about being your best possible self. Yeah. And it's your journey in getting there. And that refrain, that theme keeps coming back through the show. And I think that's such a lovely theme. You picked it up there in Roy Kent, but it's right there, right from the start. Yeah. There's such intelligence, it's almost, I probably on my own saying this, but it's almost Shakespearean in the depth to the writing. It put so much thought into this that here we are talking about, you can talk about leadership, you can talk about being your best self as a person, you don't have to be a leader, but there's definitely references to John Wooden as this leader, and his thing was, you win by being your best self. Never mind about just the immediate goal, just be the best person and enjoy the journey.
Yeah, I mean, so what I do in my career I'm in, I get a lot of young people that are in a particular job area that is, they don't have the aptitude to go to college. Maybe they might have the resources to go to college. They don't have a trade. So they end up in this hospitality service industry. And unfortunately, a lot of people look at that as kind of a dead end job. So they feel like they're not valued. They're not worth it. And when I get them, what I've evolved to my class that I've been able to have for 5 days, what we do on the first Monday is we give them a life assessment, and it's, your finances, your fitness, your family, your friends, all those things. And then we say, look, is this who you want to be? And if it is, that doesn't mean you stop working. What you got to do now is fight to make sure you stay that way. But most of us want to be better versions of ourselves. And then if you want to be a leader, no one's going to follow a mess kind of thing. So we go into that whole thing. And then through the week, we offer different areas that we give them resources to get better at. We don't talk about faith, of course, you got to be careful there. But we do touch a little bit on personal finance. We talk on diets and habits. We use Stephen Covey's things. But then on the Friday of the week, which would be tomorrow, I'm in the class now. So if you hear any noise, they're downstairs. We have them do a vision board, which honestly was my wife's idea. And it was brilliant because it bookended this week of, this idea that we're so busy all the time. We're always running from something or running to something. And what I always tell everybody, this week's gives you an opportunity to take a time out and breathe and then think about what you're doing before you do it. And if you want to, you can change in in a lot of ways. And change is choice, and habits is this and that. But, the other character, which I really love is Nate. And you're seeing his evolution. And from today, actually in class, I was talking about how when somebody doesn't know something and then you teach them and they know how to do it, the best thing to do is have them teach somebody else. But there's so much doubt and fear. And that fear comes from anxiety, which some people call lack of confidence. And what I tell them, as I say, as a coach, if you can make those people comfortable, then they become coachable. And then when they're coachable, they become competent. And that's where confidence comes from. So I say that. And then in rereading some of the stuff from talking to you and watching it, I was just thinking about the story about Nate and how he's asked to address the team in the first episode. And you write about that in a book. Can you talk a little bit about that, about how, how people have to believe in themselves more?
Yes. So as part of, Nate is this character who is so unsure of himself. He's so overlooked that he is astonished when anyone can what you remembered my name, and you can see how pleased he is. He is someone who very, very obviously had problems. Well, he's had no support growing up. He's had nobody saying to him, you can do this, or you're great. He's had none of that. So, and that mirrors a lot of people. None of us have, you know, we don't all have perfect parents. And sometimes you don't get people saying, yay, you're really good at this. And along comes Ted, who starts doing that for him. And so we see how that affects him, and we see him grow. And there's another little moment. It's all about, can we encourage others? And so it's not just about believing in ourselves, it's believing in other people. And actually that comes back to in season 3, which if you haven't joined the show, I don't want to give anything away for all those people, because it is a delightful show. I mean, I've not met anyone who doesn't like it. But there's a lovely bit where Keely, who is another one of the characters, has a problem with another woman she's working with, and she's employed someone who this other woman doesn't like. And she says, let's just see what happens when we both believe in her. So spelling it out really nicely. To come back to Nate, Ted champions Nate, and he builds him up to the point where, and suddenly Nate is a really, really useful team member. He thrives, he blossoms. And there's a lot of psychology that has been written about this too. There are tests where psychologists set up teachers in classrooms, and you know, we're able to measure, when teachers believe in pupils, how much further those pupils get. I don't know how you measure that. There's greater depth to that. But there is as a yardstick, you can measure how you can excel when someone else is believing in you. And Nate is a perfect example. We do see in that story arc, he gets to a point where he's, you know, he turns to the dark side.
Yeah.
But that's yet to play out in season 3. I have absolutely believed it's going to be fine. And there's also a hidden message way, way back. Another of the characters, Higgins, talks to Keely because she's going to move on. And he says, when you mentor someone, your best hope is that they move on. That's, if you've mentored and supported someone, you want them to thrive. You want them to move on. So we are all seeing Nate, because eventually he does move on to another team. And we all see that as a betrayal. But as Ted was his mentor and supported him, I think that Ted is actually pleased for him. He's thrilled, because that's it. That's showing where the belief in someone else can take you. And that's your protege. That's someone you wanted to nurture and see grow. And there they are, they've done it. And now they're out in the world on their own. Nothing is more fulfilling than seeing other people succeed. Yeah.
And it's a kind of couple of things letting go, saying about earlier when I was talking about enjoying this part of where I am, not the tail end, but I've worked hard. I've done this. I've helped other people. It's hard to let go sometimes, but what Ted kind of teaches you there in that moment is, here's this guy that he took and helped mold and help build up from confidence. And then in the show, he goes on to become a rival. And you're thinking, man, that he should be mad. Ted should be mad at that. And he doesn't. It's almost as it's happening, you're mad. And then Ted doesn't. And you're like, ooh, you feel guilty for being mad about it. And hopefully you can take a lesson from Ted. And I look at something just happened this past week where you had the 2 basketball players and the one girl. I don't know if you watch the women's NCAA basketball, but you had the one girl from LSU and the other girl from Iowa. And there was a point where at the end of the game, there's this thing where I can't see you. And it was a gesture saying that, and a lot of people thought that the one girl was being disrespectful. And what she had done was the same thing that the other girl did. But when they were being interviewed, they were both saying, I think that that's okay. Other people were trying to make it out that what, say, Nate did to Ted was wrong. But Ted was like, no, it's not. That's the whole intent, was to mentor somebody so that they can be as good as I am or learn from me and be better. but a lot of people have a hard time letting that go, right? And that's the message there.
I personally believe that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think as a coach, that's what we want. We want to build. You're trying to build success in other people. You're believing in other people.
Yeah. Yeah, another one that I really love. I mean, they're all really good. Do you have a favorite chapter? Is there one section? I mean, I may put you on the spot, but is there one chapter in there? Like the Be Curious one, I really liked because, what it does is you talk about asking questions. So in my business, you have customers come in or an employee come in and they're in a good mood or they're rude or they're whatever, and right away we cast judgment on that person's a jerk. I have a son with autism, and for the longest time, my wife and I kind of were careful where we brought him because we used to watch how people would look at him. And, when you see a person that acting a certain way, we cast our judgment on them. But rather than say this person's mean or this person is arrogant or this person is whatever, in the book, you kind of lay it out really nice to be curious, to kind of ask questions about, well, maybe to get to know that person. That was probably one of my favorite chapters in there. Can you expand on that a little bit about how you need to not judge people, even though we do?
Yes, we do, don't we? We all do. I think it's a sort of built-in mechanism. But then, we have to work on that. Because that makes us better human beings. And so that curiosity, that there's research behind that, which I do go into. And I was fascinated to discover it. There are certain people that sort of put a shield up about themselves, and they tend to be very cynical. Everything's going wrong in their life. They can't be, they're not looking out. They're always looking in. And we all encounter those kind of people. And Ted, so in the TV show, it all comes out in a darts match with the band. And he said it really, really beautifully. He says he's going to win at this game of darts. It's a really amazing. We're all on the edge of our seats, and he does this sort of Shakespearean soliloquy.
Yeah.
If anybody had ever asked me, if anyone was really curious, they'd have asked me if I could play darts, and of course, so he shows without giving too much away. But it comes back to whether we look out, we look at other people. So when we're first getting to know this character, he's asking people their names. He's talking to them. He's making friends with them. There are people who do it naturally, and for the other people, you have to work a little bit harder. But by doing that, there's a whole load of research about how that can also help us. If you're talking to other people, you're helping other people, it makes you feel good. It comes back to that. If you're curious about other people, you're not just learning information. There's some sort of magic that happens in your brain. And there's science behind that magic, because it's not really magic. But all we have to do, and it's simple, we just have to ask questions of other people, not annoying ones, but ones where you are curious about other people, about other things in the world, and it just helps you. It makes your own life more rich, textured. It just helps you. It brings a certain peace to yourself.
Yeah.
Why, I don't know, but it just does. And so he managed to do it, and he tells us, be curious, not judgmental. And they are the two opposites, actually, because if you go around seeing someone and you don't bother to ask a question, you're going to make a judgment about them, and your judgment might be completely wrong. And chances are your judgment about them might be a more cynical judgment. There was, I know, as Jason Sudeikis has said it, there was a distinct policy and intention to make Ted not cynical. They did not want a cynical human being. They wanted someone who asked questions. And we can see in this character how that benefits him and it benefits everyone around him.
Yeah, and I think you're right in there too. When I guess the premise of the show was based off of a skit to promote, I guess, bringing world soccer over here to the States, and like his character was kind of more less dimensional, and I think what was the word you used, but I guess his character was not naive. Crow, what was it?
But he didn't want him to be ignorant.
Ignorant, yes, I love that. And then what Jason wanted to do, I guess, is evolve and not have that character be that dimensional, and you want to have him be ignorant and interested, I think is what you would put in there. And one of the things that as soon as I was reading that part of it, I thought of one thing that we talk about a lot here is the act of listening, the act of active listening, and not with your ears, but with your eyes. And that how people are talking more with their body language than they are the words. And it's amazing how many people are like, yeah, I've really been struggling with this person because I ask them a question, they tell me the answer, but if I listen to their answer with my eyes, maybe I could get a better answer on that, and we judge people that way too quick. So
yes. We judge on appearances. We're sort of conditioned, I suppose, to do that.
Yeah.
The job is getting past that. The job is, because you see someone, you see people all the time, but you see someone at the supermarket and you make a snap judgment of it, but try smiling, try asking a question, and almost guaranteed whatever you think you're thinking about that person, that person is not. It's as simple as that.
Right. Well, I mean, I could keep talking and ask a lot of questions, and it's such a great little book. But I mean, I guess I usually try to say, in order to be the best version of yourself, you have, so other people choose to follow you. What's one thing that you would do, but what do you think it says, the whole idea is, what would Ted Lasso do? Is there one thing that comes to mind that you think in all the different situations out there, is there one approach that you think Ted Lasso takes and that trumps all the other ones that he would do? What would he do?
Okay, so yes, I do have one. I mean, this was the ultimate reason why I wrote the book. So prior to Martin Seligman, who you mentioned, who wrote the book about optimism, was Viktor E. Frankl, who wrote this book, Man's Search for Meaning. And to mine, that's why I question whether Martin Seligman is the granddaddy, and I bet you he himself would say, no, there is that one. Because he's a very lovely gentleman. But point is that, so Viktor Frankl was sent off to Auschwitz. He was an Auschwitz survivor. He was already a psychologist when he was thrown in there. And he already was working on a theory about how our last remaining freedom is how we react. We talked briefly about reacting to things, but I think that is ultimately what Ted Lasso is all about. Viktor Frankl tested this theory that he saw some people fared back better than others in Auschwitz. They were in the worst of all possible circumstances that any human being can ever find themselves in. And some did better than others. What was the difference? And he was able to witness firsthand that it was the people that held on to hope and managed to find some sense of purpose and keep going. And those are people that survived better. And so how does that relate to Ted Lasso? Ted has an entire stadium of fans calling him a wanker, which is, just so you know, a very, very rude British term. He's got a wife who wants to divorce him. He's got a boss who initially is out to trip him up. Everything is going wrong. But here is this calm, collected, funny individual who has a savviness about him. He knows that that's going on. It's not stupid. He knows that he's got a better plan. He's got a smarter plan. And he is choosing to ignore that. And if you take that whole idea of bad things coming your way, circumstances, we have no control over so many circumstances in our lives. If you can somehow, when the shit hits the fan You can go, okay, I can be really upset about this. I can kick the furniture. Or I can go, okay, this has happened. How am I going to deal with it? I'm going to deal with it. This is part of my journey. I'm going to be calm. I'm going to carry on, and it's going to be fine. And those people who choose that and still manage to find a measure of power in it, I think. They can keep going, and Ted is the example of that. And that was where I started from with that book. I'm a firm believer that the writers in the show have read that book. It's a very famous book. It came out in the 30s, I think, and it's still selling copies. And that ultimately, I think that's what Ted's all about. And I love adopting that myself. When I discovered that, once you've got that little idea in your head, then you go through life with that idea in your head. That's terrific. I mean, Nelson Mandela had the same idea, and he talked about, I think I'm right, but it's about, how you choose to react. And I think we can see it everywhere. Once you're onto something like that, you can see examples all the way through.
No, and I think, and I think, Frankel, like you said, it's just you can choose. You can't choose not to be an Auschwitz, but you can choose how you're going to a certain degree, behave or think in that. And it goes right back to that lady bumping your car in the parking lot. You made that choice, and that's great. It's a perfect way to kind of bookend our conversation. And I really I'm so glad I was able to find the book, and appreciate you taking the time to chat with us a little bit. And I definitely will be promoting it. We've sold a couple more for you today, and I know there'll be more coming the way. But what is the best way for people to and I'll put this stuff actually in writing as well when we do put it out. But what's the best way to get in touch with you or follow your writings and subsequent research that you're putting together? I love the blogs too. I've been reading some of those. I need to read a lot more. Do you have a follow-up, or are you gonna?
It's interesting. So I've been approached by someone who's a big business leader up in Palo Alto who loves Ted Lasso. He wants to write a book with me. He's a business books bestseller, and he wants to do a Ted Lasso in business management book. You can see how it works on a sort of personal psychology level, but you can see how it would translate to business management too. Because Ted is all about building a team,
right?
A team that was really, everyone hated each other, and he managed to bring them all together. How do you do that? So that's an idea. And then my other big project, but this sort of unrelated. I'm writing a book about type 1 diabetes, because I have a son with type 1 diabetes.
Okay. Well, I mean, I wish I had the attention span. I have a little bit ADD sprinkled through me, so I have to figure out how I can get all this. I have a book in me about something, probably on coaching. That's something that's close to my heart. And if I start there, I'll be able to move that needle. But I do appreciate you taking the time. And I know that the people that hopefully I can get this in front of will enjoy the book and hopefully fall in love with the show. I can't wait to watch the next episode. I think it's Sunday. Is it Friday night? Friday night is, I think, is Shrinking. And I think Sunday night is Ted Lasso, or I might have that.
I don't know. It's in Los Angeles. It comes out. It's officially a Wednesday, but in Los Angeles we can get it on a Tuesday night. So I'm on Tuesday night. It comes out at 12 o'clock on a Tuesday, and then Wednesday I write a review. I write that for a magazine. And gracious enough, to take it, and then I sort of sprinkle it around the internet. And thank you so much for inviting me, because I'm really grateful. I'm grateful for you, offering my book and promoting it to other people. I'm just so grateful.
Big fan. And like I said, I've already given quite a few away, and I will continue to do that. I do appreciate it. And you have to watch the series, but this book is definitely a great way to take some notes. And as you can tell, it's almost like a little handbook that you can use. And I appreciate you taking the time to write it. So thank you.
Thank you.